With reference to the text discussed in class by Foucault, the Invisible Committee, de Beauvoir and Young, elaborate on one of the following quotations from Sartre's Existentialism and Humanism. "You are free, therefore choose, that is to say, invent." This is my first year submission for Existentialism. And sorry if you get any weird pangs in audio for this one because my cat is on my lap and likes to play with headphones. Firstly, a disclaimer. Don't copy this work because it will get flagged for plagiarism. This work has been submitted to Newcastle University in my first year, so it's not amazing and it's definitely not perfect. This is part of a video series that I'm currently doing where I read out my essays and talk about the grade I got on them, so you can see where I went wrong and then hopefully learn from my mistakes. So this essay that I'm about to read to you guys got 44%, which is a third class essay. This was the worst grade that I got in my first year, and I still don't believe that it actually deserved this grade. The reasoning that I got this grade was apparently because I had copied too much content from the lectures. However, I hadn't actually focused on the lectures at all because I had no idea what was going on throughout most of them. They weren't well structured or organised in basically any way at all. It was mainly just watching videos and humorous conversations about the lecturer's life, so really don't think that that was at all true. It had all been based on research that I had done myself. So I don't believe it deserved this grade. I believe that it deserved probably a 2-2 for its basic understanding in each philosopher. It probably would have been more detailed if I had done less philosophers, but I was trying to impress my lecturer, which obviously, as you can see, did not go well. Anyway, let's get straight to it. You are free, therefore choose, that is to say, invent. Sartre states this in his text Existentialism and Humanism, and this means that humans have the freedom to choose what they are and what they want to be through the decisions that they make. An example that he gives is about a mother at home with her son. The woman's husband is away at war and her son has died fighting in a revolution. Now the son still with her has to decide whether to be compassionate and stay with his mother, who is lonely, or whether to act using bravery, fight in the revolution in place of his brother. Here he must choose between compassion and bravery, but once he has made his decision it will determine what kind of person he is inventing of himself. For Sartre, existence comes before essence. This means that humans exist before they create their characteristics that determine who they are. An example that he gives of this to develop the reader's understanding is the difference between a penknife and a person. Penknives are a pre-existing physical thing that has a purpose to cut things, but also are portable. For it to fulfill this purpose, it must have a sharp blade and retract into a safe holster so as not to cut anything whilst it is being transported from place to place. In contrast, human beings have no pre-existing purpose. There is nothing that they ought to be. This can be explained when Sartre says, "Man first of all exists, encounters himself, surges up in the world, and defines himself afterward." Here he is saying that humans exist first and then they have to explore themselves and make choices that will define them later, though he makes it clear that his understanding is that all humans will have a choice, and once you've made that choice, it makes you who you are. However, when someone makes a choice, they are unintentionally choosing for everyone. For example, a vegetarian has decided for themselves that they will not eat meat. However, in reality they are deciding that nobody should eat meat. Eventually, he will be what he makes of himself. So if we look back at the penknife example, the penknife's essence does come before existence, but for humans it does not. This can be seen in psychology, as there is an emphasis on how experience can affect people's future decisions, and whom they end up creating themselves to be as they grow up from a child, hence why everyone has existential feelings of abandonment or loneliness. These feelings, according to Sartre, are vital to living as they affect what kind of choices humans make, as well as showing that humans will still make choices even when they have no hope left. As a society, we do not appear to value these emotions, though, as feelings of loneliness are often medicated so that people are able to feel more comfortable. Everyone is told that they are so unique because of how they formed themselves, but in the end we all have these existential doubts and end up following the same routines as everyone else and attempt to fit in, so that we are not rejected by our social clique. Looking at Foucault's The Use of Pleasure, his stance on the quotation is quite similar in that what people do creates who they are. Foucault's text focuses on ancient Greece and their lack of rules that restrict their actions. For example, they had no form of sexual orientation, they only had the decision to act when given a situation. He states, "The acts, gestures, and contacts that produce a certain form of pleasure." So he is saying that whatever someone chooses to do as an action will produce a certain amount of pleasure, and as humans, everyone is searching for whatever creates the highest amount of pleasure for them. Once people find what produces high amounts of pleasure, they will repeat those actions until the characteristic that surrounds that action becomes a characteristic of their essence. If we look at the example from before about the son who needs to choose between joining the revolution or staying at home to keep his mother company, the choices he then makes will decide on what characteristic he claims. This differs to Sartre slightly though, as Sartre would say that for the son to stay home it would give him a compassionate essence, whereas Foucault would say that it would depend on how the act of being compassionate made him feel. If being compassionate maximised his pleasure, then compassion would make a characteristic of his essence. However, if he disliked the feeling of being compassionate or decided that he would have preferred to be brave and join the revolution, then it would not have added to his essence, just as it would not make him cowardly for choosing against the action, unless it maximised his pleasure choosing not to go because he had reasoned that it would be scary to go fight. Foucault then adds to this by arguing that his essence is then sustained through moral work. If one does not exercise the soul, one cannot sustain the functions of the soul. So if the boy in the example chose to be compassionate but then never did a compassionate act again in his life, then his characteristic of being compassionate would not be sustained and therefore not become a function of his soul. An objection to Sartre's statement, though, could be de Beauvoir, who argued that society oppresses women by characterizing them in her text as second sex, which is a term which she uses to rank women's importance as second to men. During the text, she explains that men are essential, absolute, and transcendent, whereas women are inessential, incomplete, and mutilated. Men are known to extend onto the world and make choices, whereas women are doomed for inwardness. This is because from a young age women are not born feminine but conditioned by society over time into accepting passivity and deprivation of her subjectivity, slowly moulding her into an object. De Beauvoir describes women as not inherently inferior but as free autonomous beings like everyone else. However, they don't make themselves because in reality they are formed by cultural forces. A woman does not obtain an essence, she is burdened by her cultural situation, and therefore is destined to be denied the possibility of independence or creativity, and forced into a dissatisfying life of cleaning, childbearing, and sex. This is because woman appears to have the tendency not to choose, to act, thus making women physically handicapped. At the same time, male domination is not inherent, but is also conditioned culturally, as she suggests that man learns his power also. Overall, we seem to accept what society has taught us because otherwise we fear rejection and outcast. This shows that we are born free to choose and invent ourselves. However, we all seem to fall into the same pattern of following what society conditions us to fall into. One of the key difficulties for women to invent themselves, according to de Beauvoir, is their reproductive function, which they both are treasured for and rivaled for. An example of this is seen easily in our society, as it appears that it is found as men grow older, they continue to be attractive, whereas with women they are more attractive when they are younger and fertile. This causes women to feel pressures to appear younger through surgery and makeup, or using their bodies as sexual objects to attract men. Men don't have this fear nearly as much as older men can still be seen as attractive, as they still have the ability to reproduce. This both traps women in a vicious cycle of instability and a need to fit in with society, as well as freeing women as they can create life and would be respected for doing so, although it can still be argued that they could be judged in terms of whether they decide to have or not have children. This is contrary to Sartre because we cannot invent ourselves. We follow what society decides to create of us. Sartre is then contradicted by Jung, who wrote the text Throwing Like a Girl. This text looks at the differences between men and women in relation to space using an experiment which consists of multiple young girls and boys, then older men and women throwing a ball. In the experiment, it is seen commonly that the boys use their space and their full bodies to throw the ball, yet the girls are far more limited and use less space, using just their arms to throw the ball. Jung uses this experiment to explain how this can be seen in society also, as every human existence is defined by its situation, whether male or female. A woman limits herself by failing to make the full use of the body's spatial potentialities. They tend to be less open with their bodies in terms of stride. They sit with their legs closed and arms crossed. They don't see themselves as capable of lifting and carrying heavy things or pushing with significant force. They tend not to put their whole bodies into engagement into physical tasks with as much ease as men do. They tend to be more timid and uncertain about what they're doing. Jung states, "We have more of a tendency than men to greatly underestimate our bodily capacity. We decide beforehand, usually mistakenly, that the task is beyond us, and thus give it less of our full effort. At such a half-hearted level, of course, we cannot perform the tasks, become frustrated, and fulfill our own prophecy." Here she is describing as to why women do not perform hard tasks such as heavy lifting as easily as men do. It is because they underestimate themselves and therefore do not have the confidence to complete the task. This is in opposition to Sartre, as Jung is saying that women are not free to choose as they have a prophecy to fail when up against men. A woman often lives her body as a burden, which must be dragged and prodded along, and at the same time protected. This is called ambiguous transcendence, which is an existence beyond the normal or physical level, but at the same time is burdened with the experience of the body as a limited object. This is to say that a woman is a limited object. Jung then moves on to say, unintentionally projects the aim to be accomplished. So women have the intention to be accomplished. However, feminine motion often severs this mutually conditioning relation between aim and enactment. Therefore, women will never reach accomplishment. This can be observed in the tendency of women to believe that relatively easy tasks are beyond their capabilities, an underestimation of real capacity and hesitancy in action. So if we look back to what Sartre has said in Existentialism and Humanism, that you are free, therefore choose, that is to say invent, it could be seen that Jung thinks quite differently on the issue, as women are not free anymore, and neither to an extent are men. The Invisible Committee, however, seem to support Sartre's view to an extent, as they discuss in The Coming Insurrection how humans can create their own essence by what they choose to do. To the Invisible Committee, this makes handicapped people the model citizens, as they already have limitations which give them automatic essence. For example, a person who has a personality disorder may act in a way in which their personality is summarized by reckless behavior or overwhelming emotions. These psychological traits give them essence and create them as people. However, for those who do not have a personality disorder or physical disabilities, it means that there is a free range to invent themselves, but then society may impact the choices that they make. An example of this could be clothing. Someone may want a new pair of trousers, but each person is more likely to choose a pair of trousers which are popular, such as black leggings or joggers or jeans, rather than a pair of trousers which are not popular, such as neon striped shorts with mesh going down the leg and ruffles on the ankle. This doesn't make us unique, it makes us fear rejection. This shows us that there is support of Sartre's statement as people do invent themselves. However, it may object to Sartre as it also shows that people are not free as they trap themselves in societal bondage, which is because there is no content to our unique identities. As people, we make decisions based on drop-down lists that are already made up for us. Like in my previous example of fashion choices, we choose the trending styles because that is what is all available to us. This would infer that nobody is choosing themselves, but they are finding themselves using this drop-down list constructed by a cultural situation. In conclusion, in Sartre's statement, it is clear that there are mixed views from multiple philosophers when elaborating on the quotation. In the use of pleasure, what people do creates who they are, which is found similar in existentialism and humanism. In the second sex, it is seen that people do not have freedom, as Sartre suggests, because they are oppressed as they grow up, to eventually be characterized as objects. And then, in Throwing Like a Girl, Young explains to the reader how they are shaped by society to all be invented in the same form, therefore again not having freedom. Then concluding is in The Coming Insurrection, where the Invisible Committee draw that some people are born with essence, whereas others give each other essence. Therefore, everyone invents each other. It is the general consensus that Sartre therefore does not reach the complete answer, as humans do not seem to begin with the freedom to make choices. However, they do not appear to solely invent themselves, they are invented by those around them. So now that I've reread the essay, I kind of understand a little bit more why I got a 3rd class. I still believe that maybe it should have been 50% because I would still say that it's got the potential of the previous essay that I looked at on my channel. However, I have noticed some things myself which my lecturer didn't even point out when she was grading this. The comments that she made were solely saying that I had taken her word. But actually, the things that I've noticed are as follows. So I'm using personal pronouns way too much. You should never use personal pronouns in an essay. That is something that I've noticed in this essay, and I shouldn't have done that. I'm pretty sure my sister would have definitely hounded me for that. Like, that is not something that you do, and I've done it way too much here. A second thing is grammar and punctuation. I have very barely used any grammar or punctuation, which is not good. It was difficult to read, which means that, my lecturer would have found that hard to read and probably would have downgraded me because she couldn't read it very well, possibly. And also, a lot of the quotes are quite misplaced. They could have been better integrated, and some of them just don't fit with what I'm saying. I should have found a different quote for what I was trying to convey. So those are the things that I noticed. This was for existentialism and the self. Tell me what you guys think below. Comment about whether you think that this was a fair grade, or whether you think that this was perhaps a bit undergraded. I mean, I don't know. You guys just decide for me. Tell me whether I'm just being personal about it or not, I guess. And also give it a like if you enjoyed this video, if it's taught you something about essay marking. And also subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos. This is part of a series. My videos aren't always like this, so if you do want to just learn stuff as well, then I do videos like that as well. But this is just a particular series, so also if you want to see this particular series, then go to my channel and you can find it in a playlist. So yeah, I will hopefully see you next time. Bye guys.